Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Hockey Hacks podcast, a proud member of the Heavy Hockey Network. I'm Devin Davidson, your host. Once again, riding solo, an odd occurrence for me, but here we are, episode 118, Central Division Fantasy Preview Part 1. I've got a special guest here today with me, Stephen Ellis, Associate Editor and Prospect Analyst for Daily Faceoff and co-host of the Puck Poolies podcast. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I love the podcast that you and Matt do together, Puck Poolies. I think you guys do a great job over there. And, of course, I've been following you and all your work for prospects over Daily Faceoff. Lots of good stuff there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's Daily Faceoff's been awesome. And, again, you could do a lot worse than covering hockey for a living, I'd say, right?
Yeah, no, in fact, I'm a little bit jealous. I wish that's what I was doing for a living. But I'm having fun doing this anyway, so it's all good. Before we get too far along here, I just wanted to give you a chance to maybe let our listeners know where they can find you if they don't already follow you on X or Twitter or whatever you're calling it these days.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter /X at Celis Hockey, which is also the same username I use for Threads. And basically, I tweet a lot about hockey, a lot about very different levels of hockey. Like it's not uncommon for me in 1 week to go to an NHL, an AHL, an OHL, and maybe some other junior game in a 7-day span. So I follow kind of a lot of everything. So it's a lot of prospects. Obviously, do the fantasy show with Matt Larkin. It's been a good time. We used to have a show on the Hockey News together, and we ported it over to Daily Faceoff after we both moved over. So, it's hockey all the time. And a lot of racing tweets. I apologize for people who don't care about racing, but you unfortunately will be subjected to some of my thoughts on Canadian and American racing.
I think that's awesome. So how did you get into racing? Has that just been a lifelong thing for you, or you've been to some races recently, or how does that work?
I've been a NASCAR fan basically since I watched my very first race about 6 days after I was born. Obviously, don't remember too much about it, but it's kind of like hockey's the thing that I know the most and things of that. But I love keeping racing as more of a fan thing. Again, NASCAR, IndyCar, sports cars, everything. I've went to the Daytona 500 this year.
Wow.
We had a couple races last month, the Toronto Indy and the IMSA Motorsports race. And then I got 2 NASCAR races next week, a Monday, Tuesday, dirt races, which are going to be a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Haven't been to that track in a few years. So racing's just kind of I do a lot of sim racing too.
Yep.
So I have my racing team. We got a 24-hour race coming up next weekend. So we're doing a lot of practice on that. So it's a lot of racing.
That's super cool. So I'm sure you've seen all the Netflix documentaries too. I've seen a couple episodes of the one.
Can't stand the Formula One documentary series. It actually partly killed my interest in watching Formula One. To me, that is the worst form of racing around.
Really?
Because it's the least competitive.
Okay.
I watch I kind of call it, and sorry for any soccer fans, but I call it the soccer of motorsports. It's really slow and boring.
Interesting. Well, I mean, as a guy I'm a total outsider when it comes to that kind of stuff, but I find it really interesting too. So.
It's I gotta say it's like there's nothing about the spectacle of it is nothing could beat that in sports. It's like if you're in an F1 race, it's extremely special and they make it so prestigious, and every event is like that. No sport can compete like that. Like obviously soccer probably could because of how big it is,
right.
But it's like you're not getting a atmosphere like you get at a F1 race that you would get in a hockey game. Like that's not even close. Sorry, Vegas Golden Knights, you guys can't match with a regular F1 race.
They like to think they do, of course. All right. Well, before we go into the Central Division fantasy preview, I'm just going to mention that this episode is brought to you by Flaviar. Refine your palate with spirits from around the world. Sample and train your palate with curated tasting sets. Buy bottles at a discount and curate your home bar. Socialize and learn together with other members. Visit flaviar.com/FHH today to save 10% when you sign up for a subscription. Available to listeners in the United States, United Kingdom, and European Union. And with that, we're going to continue with our divisional previews. Like I said, Central Division Part 1. So we're going to cover off the Arizona Coyotes, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Colorado Avalanche, and the Dallas Stars. Stephen, I'm really excited to have you here for those first 2 that I mentioned because I think they've got some really intriguing prospect pools.
Yeah, you look at that there's Arizona Coyotes team. And like for me, myself, I've been doing a prospect series kind of every day, looking at the top 10 prospects. And you look at the Coyotes, and just in their one thing, I think their top 10 prospects, the average height's probably close to 6'3" or 6'4". Like, they were a big team.
Wow.
Logan Cooley looks a little bit silly in comparison, but Coyotes have a great prospect pool. The Blackhawks, they got Connor Bedard. They got Oliver Moore. Like that's going to be a fun one. So
yeah,
the 2 teams in the downswing right now that I think will eventually start to improve.
Yeah, no question. I was actually really excited reading through these teams before we get on here. So let's get into the Arizona Coyotes then. So they were 28, 40, and 14, 7th in the Central last year. 27th in goals for at 2.74, 24th in goals against at 3.60. Corsi 4, 32nd in the league, 43.06, so not a good puck possession team. Special teams also equally as unimpressive at 18.91 on the power play and 74.61% on the PK. In terms of the schedule next year, they've got 9 back-to-back sets this upcoming season. That's tied for third fewest with Vancouver and Nashville. 39% of the games are played on light days, tied for fifth most among all teams in 2023, 2024. Some key additions to note here. So obviously Logan Cooley decided to turn pro and not go back to school, which is great for the Coyotes. They brought in Jason Zucker, Nick Bukestad, Sean Dursey, Troy Stetcher. And then leaving was Zach Cassidy in the buyout, Christian Fischer, Shane Gostisbehere, and Jacob Chikrin. So I guess my question I'll ask you, Stephen, first here is, did this team improve? And in my opinion, it looks like they have, but what do you think?
I think so too. Getting Logan Cooley was a nice addition. I'm not sure for him if that was really the right move right away, but this is an opportunity where he's probably going to be playing top line, top 6 immediately, and he'll get the opportunity to really grow with this team. And he's playing during a time where he can make mistakes, and they're not going to penalize him for that. They're going to give him those opportunities. You look at Zucker, not the guy he once was, but a really nice addition there. Matt Dumba just also signed there too.
Yes.
Can't forget about that. Yep. That's a good one there. Kerfoot, maybe out of the spotlight of Toronto. We'll see what he could do. I think he's a very good defensive center that was forced into scoring roles that he just could not play in. I like Sean Dursey a lot. Troy Stetcher is coming back. Nick Bukestad going back. I don't think they're blue lined better since they traded Jacob Chikrin, but I think that it's also just a team. Again, you're still trying to get those building blocks for the future. This is still another transitional year, which unfortunately the stark reality is most of this team's existence has been trying to rebuild. So we'll see what they could do there, but I think this is definitely a team that's going to be a little tougher to play against, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're involved in the wild card race, to be honest, when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I think they've got a lot more depth this year. It's interesting to see. Let's start with Logan Cooley, because you mentioned him first, and obviously that's an intriguing one for anyone that's into Dynasty or prospects. I've got him here at 21 goals and 55 points for next season. It's tough for me to project players like Logan Cooley or Dylan Guenther because there's not really a lot of historical data to work with, and you don't really know how they're going to get deployed necessarily. So it's kind of a stab in the dark right now. But I don't think he's going to take over Barrett Hayton at first-line center just yet. But what do you think?
I think Cooley, a more realistic prediction's probably in the 35 to 40 point range, okay, to be honest. Because, just you look at it, it's not easy to get 55 points. And for as good of a prospect that he was, I think it's still a big adjustment there. And for, again, Cooley did have to rely a little bit on his line mates to go out there. Jimmy Snuggerud, fantastic shooter. Matthew Nyes, we know what he could do. Toronto's really excited about him. I don't know if he's going to get, if he's not playing with Clayton Keller, I'm not sure that he's going to get all those points because it's still a Coyotes team that doesn't seem to score a whole ton. So I'm thinking more like a 40 points is a nice rookie season for him. I'll think of that because, we know Bedard is going to be able to do some crazy things in the NHL this year, but I don't know if how many other prospects, for as good of a rookie pool this is, I don't know how many of them are going to hit like the 50 points, and I don't see that happening for Cooley just because of who he's probably going to have to play with.
Okay. Yeah, I guess part of my projection, and that's totally fair, part of my projection was him based on him playing with a guy like Dylan Guenther and probably Matthias Michelli or maybe Jason Zucker on that left side. So I kind of had Dylan Guenther for the same projection, 20 goals, 51 points. But again, I'm not sure, right? They're great prospects. These are A-level prospects, but the NHL is a different ballgame too, right?
Put it this way, I think I could see Matthias Michelli being, if those were 3 guys to play together, Michelli would be the one to watch. We saw his point production last year, almost 65 point pace. That's, I don't know if anyone saw that one coming, but that's kind of the thing about the Coyotes is they'll give opportunities to guys and they'll try and take them, kind of like what Vegas was early in their tenure and Seattle to a point too. And I think with Michelli, he'll be, not sure he'll be the driving force, but he'll be the playmaking threat there that I like. So, but with Guenther, I think that his experience already in the NHL is good. He's played in big moments. I loved what they did with him last year. Give him a chance to get that NHL experience, then go win the gold medal of Canada, then go and try and play a big role in the WHL. That was a perfect season from a prospect perspective. That was good asset management. So now he'll be able to take this advantage, but he won't be having to play catch up because he's played in these NHL games. I think he'll have a better season than Cooley, to be honest.
Okay, interesting. Well, let's move on to maybe that top line. So Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, and Barrett Hayton were quite effective last season. Maybe I'll start with Clayton Keller because he had a career year, right? 86 points, 37 goals in 82 games. He put up a career best 2.7 shots on goal and a 16.5 individual shooting percentage. So, and I thought what really made his season interesting or impressive was that he started the majority of his shifts in the defensive zone at 48.7% offensive zone start. So, really, really impressive season from him. Do you kind of see more of the same from Keller this season?
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if he kind of just replicated his numbers from last year. Those are pretty, given what we know that Clayton Keller kind of started off hot, didn't really play the same for a couple of years, and then he got back to being what we thought he would be. I think kind of the 80 to 85, 86 point gap is kind of what we should be expecting from him. And the team in general should be a tougher team to play against. So I think it won't be him having to do so much of the work this year and can maybe focus a bit more on the offensive side of things. But we know what he's kind of valuable at. He's a very valuable two-way player. We know he could score. Statistically, that was a fantastic season. I do expect him to probably replicate that.
Okay, yeah, I've got him at 38 goals and 85 points. Like I think he's be very, very similar to next season. Nick Schmaltz, I'm curious to see if he can continue doing what he's doing. Since November 1st of 2021, he's got 118 points in 122 games played. I don't think he's going to lose his spot next to Keller on that top line. Do you?
No, I think he'll be there. In worst case, if he was to play with a guy like Cooley, I still think it would look okay. So I think Schmaltz will continue to be a very valuable guy. Can play the power play. We'll get that ice time. I'm kind of expecting another 70-ish point season for sure. And it's interesting though you point out that he's been basically a point per game player. Since November 2021. And I do fully kind of expect him to not slow down at any point. So I like that.
Yeah, I've got him just under a point per game at 29 goals and 77 points for next year.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Barrett Hayton. So, I mean, this is a guy that I picked up late last year. He was a nice waiver wire addition to my roster. Helped me out down the stretch. He had 34 points, 17 goals, and 47 games played since January 1st. So a 30-goal, 60-point season over 82 games. My projection for him is 24 goals and 54 points. Does that seem reasonable given where he's probably going to be playing?
Yep. And he could, I wouldn't be surprised if Cooley's fighting for his spot down the line. But I think with Hayton, it's just kind of, if he's getting you 50 points a year, that's what a lot of people were kind of expecting when he got drafted as a 50-point guy that could be defensively responsible and play a bunch of minutes. So, I think his ice time will fall a little bit. He had a really good second half of that season, but I think 50 points seems like a good baseline, like around the 50 point, 55
for sure
range.
Okay, well, I want to move on to the defenseman next year. So obviously you've got Sean Durzi there, you've got Juuso Valimaki, you got Matt Dumba. I know Valimaki was actually productive down the stretch at times last season, and in fantasy he was kind of useful. But now you've got Sean Durzi there, and you've got Matt Dumba. And Matt Dumba is really, he's sort of a shell of his former self, right? I mean, he had that one big season. He had 12 or 14 goals, and he looked great. And since then, he's really had no power play time to speak of. I think he had 4% power play share last year. 2.5% power play share. So not much to speak of there. My first question to you will be, is it Durzi's power play to lose, or how do you see that shaking out? And then how do you see Matt Dumba being deployed in Arizona?
I like Durzi being probably the number one PP guy. I think Valimaki's going to put up a big threat there. I just think, Durzi, I think that with LA, their system there was he was just kind of at points lost in that one where I thought he was much better than maybe the ice time was saying that he should have been playing. I thought he was very effective. So now you go into Arizona and they're like free reign basically, like, hey, like, I know for Daily Faceoff, we had him kind of projected as a third pairing defenseman. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he'll be getting a lot more ice time. But the one thing about this group defensively is this might be the best defensive, like, top three pairs that we've seen in a long time, where there's still a lot of youth there, still a lot of inexperience with JJ Moser, only a couple years in his career, Valimaki, Durzi. That's just on the left side alone. That's pretty impressive, actually, for a team that, that was really struggling in that zone. So it'd be interesting to see how they kind of do the ice time. But I do think Durzi's going to get a lot of the power play time because we know he can do it.
Yeah, we've seen it for sure in LA. And I know they didn't want to part with him in that deal, but obviously they had to make room for PLD. And I've questioned whether or not that was the right thing for them because they still didn't address goaltending and they lost some of their depth in LA, right? So, but yeah. Anyway, another discussion for another time. I've got Durzi at 10 goals and 44 points for next year. Does that seem in the range?
I guess that one's a really tough one because of just how much left hand or left side defenseman they got. I think I'd be happy with 35.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be happy with that. Just given like it's still the Coyotes.
Yeah.
It's still they're still gonna struggle, but I think it's gonna be a good season for him. I think he'll continue to grow into a role there.
Awesome. And any hope for Matt Dumba as a fantasy hockey asset for this season or beyond?
No, I don't think he's getting any power play time. It's not the same guy that we were looking at that basically in like 2018, 2017, those years when he was putting up 30 to 50 points a year.
Yeah.
It's like obviously he hasn't even come close in recent years. He had some good guys to play with in Minnesota and just the numbers weren't following. So I'm not expecting a lot of relevance there. Again, he might even need to play a bigger role than he did in Minnesota, but I just every year it feels like we're talking about a guy who continues to lose more value. I don't think that he's going to be really relevant in that way.
Okay. And then the last thing I want to talk about here for the Coyotes is Karel Vejmelka. He's actually been a nice 0G option at times, depending on who he's playing, right? So if you're kind of specific with the matchups, he can return some value, especially in leagues that count, shots against. But I've got him pegged here for 57 starts, so 70% net share and 22 wins. Is there anyone in Arizona that's going to challenge him for starts next season?
No, because I believe the other goalie they have is Connor Ingram, and he's just kind of there. So I'm going to go with Vejmelka is going to get a lot of the starts, and he's I remember there's all the talk about trading him, and it didn't really make much sense because I don't think you get good enough value for him there. But a guy that some people thought deserved some Vezina votes. I completely disagree there. But I thought that, just in general, he did a lot with what he was given. And that alone, I think you're going to get he's going to give the team a fighting chance most nights. And that's all you could ask for a guy that had to make 52 starts in his first NHL season. Like, that's ridiculous. I remember when we did our Hockey News podcast doing our team previews, and we truly had no idea who he was. It was like we knew he was drafted by Nashville. He was part of that system. And then I remember seeing him in like one-off like international like U20 game like 5 years before that. But truly a guy that I did not expect to be an NHL starting goalie, and probably wouldn't be a starting goalie on a lot of other teams. But it's been cool to see him get those chances. It's kind of like John Gibson in Anaheim. Is like you can't rely on him to get the wins, but he'll get you starts.
Yep.
He'll face shots. That alone gets you value.
Oh, no question. I was really surprised. Like, for a guy like him to put up a 900 save percentage in Arizona, to me that is actually pretty impressive.
3 shutouts.
Right.
3 shutouts.
Yeah. No, he's done well. So I think there's some value there, especially in deeper formats.
Yeah, that was a deep cut, nice scouting find for them because they got him when he was like 25 years old and he's playing the Czech League, and the Czech League's not necessarily known for having these great shooters. And even then his league stats were like he lost a lot more than he won.
Yeah. But
he played well there. And to see him going out there and, the surface stats won't look good there in Arizona, but I don't think you can attribute it to them because when you look at the advanced stats, it's like he's a pretty solid goalie. He might even be top 15 at some points.
Okay. So there you go. Anyone in terms of prospects we should be keeping an eye on for next year, like beyond who we've talked about already? Is there anyone else in the prospect pool we should be watching or has any potential to do anything next year in redraft leagues?
Obviously we talked about Cooley and Gunther. Those are the two that I'd be watching. I think, the one name maybe a couple years from now, a bit further down to be watching would be Connor Geekie. I think it's someone who not this year, but next year should challenge for an NHL spot. And he's a guy that put up really good numbers in the WHL. He's got the size. So I have no problem about him being an effective player. He can throw hits, do things like that. He should have one more year in the WHL, so there's that. But, the fact that they got Cooley and Gunther coming in ready to go is a really nice situation to be put in.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to see that. All right, let's move on to the Chicago Blackhawks here, who were 26, 49, and 7, 8th in the Central last year, 32nd in goals for at 2.46 per game, 28th in goals against per game at 3.65. Corsi 4 was 30th at 44.57. Power play was 28th at 16.38, and the penalty kill was 22nd at 76.19. So basically every major statistical category, team-wise, they were just awful. And I guess the plan worked, right? So they're not that upset about it, but... they've got 12 back-to-back sets this season, so that's tied for 5th most with 7 other clubs. 44% of their games are played on light days. Key additions obviously being Connor Bedard, Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno, Corey Perry, Ryan Donato, Patrick Kane left last year. Jonathan Toews looks like he's ready to announce his retirement, but who knows really at this point. And Max Domi going to Dallas. So for you, Steven, did this team improve, decline, or really not? I mean, I think I know the answer, but what's your opinion?
It's hard to get worse than they were last year. And good thing is they didn't. When you add Connor Bedard, Taylor Hall just alone, you had the best prospect in hockey and a guy who won an MVP award who, he's not the same like he used to be, but you needed someone to play with Bedard, and that's one hell of a guy to get playing with Bedard. So this team's going to be significantly more damage, cause more damage. They've still got some goalie issues there, especially after losing Alex Stalock. But I think that you can't get worse, and they got a lot better. So that's the bare minimum you could ask for.
Okay, well, of course, if we're going to talk about the Blackhawks, we've got to start with Connor Bedard. I've got two questions here. I guess the first one is, we'll talk about projections, but where are you taking Connor Bedard? In a season-long redraft league, where are you pinning this guy down?
I guess it really depends on how many teams you got. He's kind of like my projection is he's going to get 75 points, which is far below what like Crosby and Ovechkin were doing in their rookie seasons, but the NHL has changed a lot since then. I think he's gonna go definitely in the first 3 rounds. I think, a team that early. I'll just say that. I guess it's easy. It's so hard to really get a good read on that. I guess it's just like how confident are you going to be in him? Could he hit 40 goals? I can see it happening. So I think that there's. You look at the guys that he's compared to, guys like Austin Matthews, David Pastrnak. I think he's going to be at their level in a couple of years, maybe 2-3 years. This year's not that. He's still playing with Chicago. He's still taking that into consideration, but he's going to get a lot of ice time, and he does throw hits. I think that's something that people need to pay attention to. I did the numbers. It was like of the last decade of forwards that were taken first overall, he was actually the most physical in terms of hits per game.
Interesting.
You wouldn't expect that for a guy who's like 5'9", 5'10", but
not at all. No.
He plays with an edge. Hitting guys in the WHL and the World Juniors is a different story, but he's not going to back down, kind of like what we saw Crosby in the early part of his career. So keep that in your mind.
Okay. No, I think we're on the same page here. I projected him for 42 goals and 74 points. Like you said, just assuming he's going to play some fairly significant minutes, and then, again, comparing him to Austin Matthews and David Pastrnak, just in terms of that shooting ability. I think, what did Matthews have in his first season? It was 40-some goals.
It was definitely high. He had like the 3 or 4 in his first game, which also helped it.
That didn't hurt at all, for sure. Do you compare him at all to Connor McDavid? I mean, or are they just, like, obviously the skating's not to the same level, but he's a generational talent. Is he kind of on the same level, or do you see him a tier below Connor McDavid?
He's definitely close. I think he'll be the closest that we've had to actually challenging McDavid for the best player status. You hear every year like, oh, it's a Tkachuk. Is it Matthews? Is it McDavid? No, it's not any of those. But like McDavid's in his own tier there. Bedard's going to be really close. I think just the way he can just absolutely dazzle players. And like, again, we're talking against junior players, and you'll see people point that out. But then he's been training with NHLers for years, and those NHL players get beat by him very easily. Like Matt Barzal, a guy that's been very close to him, is like, this guy's like already better than me, and he's playing junior hockey. Like, this is someone who's going to be a star, going to draw so much attention to himself. So it'll be kind of interesting to see. I think that just, given the team situation and how bad they were and how they clearly were built to just be awful, as opposed to just like kind of just naturally falling in there, like this was by design. I think he's just going to get so many opportunities. Like, he could be playing 20 minutes a night, like all year long, no matter what. I think like this is the guy that's going to be relied on a lot. So I think, can't say I can compare to McDavid yet, but I think in 5 years from now, he might be the only player in that same conversation.
Very interesting. Okay. Well, then, since we're talking about Bedard, I think we should probably talk about Taylor Hall, who last season with the Bruins was 15th in even strength ice time at 13:40 per game and 9th in power play time on ice at 2:14 per game. So I think, and despite that, he was still 5th in individual Corsi 4 per 60, individual scoring chances 4 per 60, and he was 4th on the team in individual high danger scoring chances 4 per 60. So there's still some juice there, I think, with Taylor Hall and playing next to Bedard. And the other thing, too, is people have said, well, it didn't work out with McDavid, it didn't work out with Eichel, it didn't work out with Pastrnak, and so it very well may not work out with Bedard. But I'm drafting this guy with the assumption he's going to play on that top left side because there's really not a lot of options to play next to Bedard next season.
No, he's as long as he's healthy, I don't think there's any reason to kind of separate those two. Like that's a guy that understands the pressure of being a first overall pick, not to the level of someone like Bedard, and not to the level of someone like McDavid, but he understands what it's like and all the pressures and the ups and downs you can go through. That's a guy you want to be like the best mentor possible. So I really like that one there for them. You know, I think he's going to still get a lot of ice time. He's going to probably play most situations with the team. I expect a lot of power play, things like that. So, you know, with Boston, he was not necessarily the guy. And, you know, again, with Pasternak and Marchand, I get that. Bertuzzi too. With Hall, I think going to Chicago, he's just going to be getting all the ice time, all the opportunities, just based on the fact they don't have many other guys. And, you know, it's still Taylor Hall. Yeah, he's had some ups and downs in his career, but when he's healthy, he's still a high impact player. So I do think that his value should benefit significantly by being on a team like the Blackhawks.
Agreed. I've got him for 23 goals and 62 points playing next to Bedard next year. Is that a reasonable projection?
Yep. Honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if he outscored Bedard. But like a point Bedard, I guess more. But that sounds about good. 60 is a good baseline.
Okay. Lukas Reichel. So obviously being a prospects guy, what's your take on Lukas Reichel? Does he get to play on that top line? Because he can play left wing and right wing, I understand, right? So does that line make sense, or do you see him just spreading? Do you see the Chicago Blackhawks spreading out the talent a little bit and Reichel playing on that second line?
He can even play center too. So there's some value there too. I've seen it in the AHL. But yeah, I think that he should be going on the first line. He's a guy that probably shouldn't have been playing full-time with the Blackhawks last year, but they knew they were bad. He probably would have improved that team, and that was not the goal. So having him play in the AHL, get that ice time, get those opportunities, I think was pretty good for his overall play there. So, you know, I think that, you know, I don't know if what we saw in the NHL is fully representative of what he's going to be able to do, but I do think that he's someone that with more confidence, no threat of going back to the AHL anymore. And given the guys he's probably going to play with on that top line, I think it's going to be a good year where 50 points is good. 55 points could happen. I'm thinking 50 is closer to 50 than 55 is my projection there.
Okay. Yeah, I've got him at 21 goals and 55 points. I mean, that's kind of, again, assuming he plays on that top line. So then for season-long redraft leagues, let's say standard 12-team Yahoo leagues, where are you picking up a guy like Reichel?
He'll definitely be more of a later round guy because you still will want to bank on some guys playing even maybe a second-line role on a better team, knowing that Chicago's still going to have a pretty rough year. And if that one line is shut down, they don't have a lot of kind of going for them. So I think he's kind of more of a later round guy in that case. But that's a short-term thing. I think this is someone who's going to be getting 60 points consistently in a few years.
Okay. Let's move on to defenseman here. How high are you on Seth Jones for next year? Because that's a guy who, by all accounts, he's probably still going to get power play one, right?
I think he's the guy that probably benefits the most out of having Connor Bedard. And a lot of that's because now there's like a legitimately guys to pass to on the power play.
Yeah.
It's like once Kane was gone and obviously Taves wasn't the same, it's like now you've got guys who can actually go out there and shoot and play. And so I think he's going to get benefit from it. I know like if he hits 60 points, I wouldn't be too surprised. And it's because kind of like with Eric Gustafsson all those years ago with the Blackhawks when he put up like close to 60 points, whatever it was, like he's just going to get so much ice time on all the opportunities to score. He's going to be relied on and everything that he's going to just by sheer volume, just going to be playing so much. So I do like what he's going to do there.
Yeah, I've got him for 10 goals and about 50 points here. So, I mean, but like you said, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him post 60 points next year. And then, of course, he's got Kevin Korchinski there, hopefully, this year. Does Kevin Korchinski play a full season? Is he going to be – how do you see him doing next year?
My projection is no. He probably, as good as he is, I think they still see the value in him going out there and trying to win the World Juniors, trying to do everything like that and do a bunch of everything. So I'm going to say no. I don't think he's going to be in the NHL, but I hope he gets a look at camp, and I hope he even maybe starts a few games in the NHL. But you don't need to rush him, given where this team is, and you don't need to call him up right now. Give him that chance to keep trying to chase championships when you could still do that. Okay, because that's gonna run out pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Just looking at prospects here again, so they've got Frank Nazar still and Oliver Moore, who they picked up in the draft. This was a really good draft for them to grab both Bedard and Oliver Moore. What's kind of your scouting report on Oliver Moore, and maybe how far away is he from a regular NHL role?
Moore is probably another 2 years. I like him kind of being able to take that chance with the University of Minnesota and see what he's able to do there. One of my favorite players in the draft last year. Shocked the Blackhawks got him when they did. So he's one where I think that he's a top 6 forward when he makes the NHL. The hardworking nature of him, if he falls to third, he's probably one of the best third liners in the NHL, just like given his speed and how hard he works. But so I expect a year or two because, again, you don't need him. Don't need to rush him. Give him that opportunity, get the college experience and play a lot of minutes, especially with Logan Cooley now out. But I think that he's going to be a guy that's going to be just putting up some great numbers sometime in the NHL. Maybe not 70 points, but 60 points and bringing all the value everywhere else to make him such a valuable player. I think he'll be more of a better real life player than a fantasy player.
Yeah, that's fair. Frank Nazar, where's he at right now?
Yeah, he'll be going back to college. We know that for University of Michigan. I got to talk to him at the World Junior Summer Showcase. He's feeling as good as he has. That looked like the Frankie Nazar I remember from his draft year, just being able to score at will and dominate around the net, take advantage of opportunities. After missing most of that last year, I think that didn't help him. He didn't look that great down the stretch, but he should be Michigan's number 1 center this year, and it might be just a one and done now, kind of going forward for him before he goes to the NHL.
Okay. And then they've got Mrazek and net, and I don't know if it's really worth having much of a conversation on this. I think that's all they've got, right? So I've got him for 53 starts, 65% net share, and maybe 15 wins if he's lucky. But probably, yeah.
You're definitely more optimistic that he'll get 50 starts than I am.
Yeah.
Given what was the last time that he had 39 last year, but it felt like he had like 10.
Yeah.
It's like the last time he hit 50 was.
I don't know if he's ever played 50, has he?
He did in Detroit. I remember that twice before he got moved to Philly, but it's been a while. Staying healthy is a problem for him.
Yeah. So I'll just go with 65% net share if healthy.
Sure. Why not? Why not?
Why not? Okay, let's move on to the Colorado Avalanche. 51, 24, and 7, first in the Central last year. They're 10th in goals for per game at 3.34. 9th in goals against at 2.72. Goals for percentage at 55 was 8th. Corsi 4 was 5th at 52.51. Power play was great, 6th in the league at 24.52, and the PK was sort of middling at 79% and 17th. So they've got 8 back-to-back sets this season, tied for the second fewest among all NHL clubs. 39% of the games are played on light days, tied for 5th most next season. So, I mean, for me, before I get into that, I'll just mention some additions here. So, obviously, Ryan Johansson in that trade, Ross Colton, Jonathan Drouin, Miles Wood, Keith Kincaid. Key departures: Alex Galchenyuk, Alex Newhook, Eric Johnson, Evan Rodriguez, JT Compher, and Lars Eller. How do you like their offseason moves here, Stephen? Because obviously they still don't have Gabriel Landeskog. He's gone for the entirety of 2023, 2024. Did they do enough, in your opinion, to shore up that center position for next year?
The depth of having Colton and Johansson is good. I don't think this is a better team, but a lot of my concerns last year were kind of towards the goaltending, not being something I really was thrilled about. Obviously not having Landeskog for a whole year is going to hurt again. But they made do with it for the most part last year. So, I think that Ryan Johansson, that's a nice piece there. Ross Colton, we know what he was able to do in Nashville, or not Tampa, sorry. It'll be interesting though, if Jonathan Drouin makes this team better. A guy that's played center and played the wing, obviously will probably play wing. Will they give him a chance to play with his old buddy and Nathan McKinnon? Does that spark something there? Does that become something valuable? You hope so, because when he got traded to Montreal, it's like, oh, he's going to play a huge role, and didn't. So it'll be interesting to see how this group looks. I don't know if I want, again, I'm not going to call them better, but I think that they're definitely still a team that you're going to want to watch, because they still have a lot of that same core that won the Stanley Cup. They still have Nathan McKinnon. They still have Cale Makar, guys like that.
Yeah, they have a crazy D-core. And I guess I'll go back to goaltending, because that was kind of the one point I was going to make, and you just alluded to it, because I had concerns about Georgiev too. I thought that was really interesting. They'd acquired him from New York, and then they came out right away and said, he's our starter. Like, bona fide, no questions. I thought Francouz had done enough the year prior to at least warrant a look, or at least maybe a 50% net share. He didn't get it. It was all Georgiev all the time, basically. So I'm projecting another 75% net share for Georgiev and 38 wins for next year. Is that what you expect? Okay.
Yeah, it's like with Francouz, if he's as long as he's healthy, I think he could play probably, realistically, probably should play more than 20 games. But he's not the better goalie. Simple as that.
There you go. Okay, and then just to your point about Jonathan Drouin, I mean, I've got him here for 12 goals and 44 points, but I think there's potential for a lot more if he does stick on that top line. I've had some debates with the guys over at Apples and Genos, so Blake Creamer and Nate were talking about this. I know they're both really high on Ross Colton for next year, and I do see a scenario where he does great, but I think they're going to give Drouin because why else do you acquire Drouin if you're not going to give him a shot next to McKinnon? And I think Ross Colton can take advantage of some lower competition at third line center and give you a little more depth. So that's how I see it starting. It doesn't maybe stay that way. What do you think?
The thing, I guess, like, as much as I'm really excited about the potential of Drouin playing with McKinnon, the last time they played together was, a decade ago? Like, it's... As much as I would love it, it's like, do they have any chemistry anymore? It's been a while. They've been through a lot of different career paths at this point.
Yeah.
So a lot of different line mates. I hope they give them much of a chance as possible, especially early in the year when you're just trying to try things out anyways. And, obviously we know Nichushkin should be back, so that's good. That's not like a roster spot they've got to fill somewhere else. So I think that with Drouin, it's give him the opportunities, but at the same time, he's inexpensive. It's not a long-term deal. If it doesn't work out, you cut ties. Maybe he's a trade deadline piece for a team that wants to add just a bit of depth scoring. But it's a fresh start for him in a smaller market. I think this is the best opportunity he's had to show what he's capable of, but he's got to take advantage of that because there were too many times in Montreal he just didn't look interested to be out there at all. I think that changes now in Colorado, a team that's in a good spot. And so I think, Colorado has been able to make a lot out of guys who were not a lot. Nichushkin's another or one of them for sure. Kadri boosted his value big time after leaving Toronto. So guys like that can really improve their situations there. And I think Drouin's a good candidate for there, but he's got to want it.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said there. I think he should be better, and I think he'll be more interested. So let's talk about Nathan McKinnon then. I guess he was one of two players last year that posted 5 shots on goal per game or better. Him and David Pastrnak. There's 2 of them. So I think just automatically, if he's at his 3-year average shooting percentage at 10.8%, you can pretty much bank on 40-plus goals for this guy. He was playing at, I think, 128-point pace. I've got him for 42 goals and 115 points. Do you see him really busting out? Because the problem with McKinnon, too, is he generally misses 10 to 15 games like clockwork, right?
Yeah, it's like it all really depends on if he stays healthy, and you can't predict an injury unless it's Matt Murray, but you can't predict injuries, and with him, it's kind of like you still expect it, and so if he's fully healthy, the 110, 115, 120 point is definitely not out of the equation, but he's got to stay on the ice.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to give you to me, I'm always weary trying to pick him up in fantasy because I know he's very valuable, but I also know that I'm probably going to get hurt by him missing a lot of time too. And then I'm putting him on IR and trying to figure something else out there. But I think that for him, it's just if he stays healthy, well over 100 points for sure.
Okay. Mikko Rantanen, he's turned into a hell of a player. I didn't really expect 105 points and 55 goals from him last year, but here we are. He had a pretty high individual shooting percentage at 18.3%. But there are some luck metrics here too that suggest we may see a little bit more from him. So, where do you see Rantanen for next year? I've got him 45 goals, 100 points in that range, but I mean, is it possible he does 110, 115 points?
I don't think so. I think he's kind of 100 points is probably a good sign there. A lot of it also just depends on how healthy his line mates kind of stick out there too. So it almost kind of feels like to the Avalanche is their success really relies on how good their top scorers stay healthy. But 55 goals last year, 105 points. I don't know if anyone really saw that coming. He had the over 90 points the year before that, but that's still a big step. I think the 100, 105 range is probably the max I would give him. The one thing to keep in mind is he's 26. I think we're kind of seeing him in his prime years right now, so we'll see kind of how much farther he possibly can go. But I don't think he's hitting 110. I think 105 is another number he can aim for after the year he just had.
Okay, totally fair. 2 more players I want to talk to you about quickly. I don't think you can talk about the Avalanche with not mentioning Cale Makar, so we'll start there. The other one being Bowen Byram. So is Cale Makar the most dynamic, offensively gifted defenseman the NHL has ever seen, or is there anyone else that comes to mind for you?
Erik Karlsson?
That'd be the only one, right?
The only one I could really think off the top of my head. Cale Makar to me is the next defenseman to hit 100 points. And he could do it this year.
Okay.
Like, like he's 100 points, 30 goals at some point in his career. I'm making a bet on that. I don't know if it's this year as he continues to improve. Hasn't played a full season yet. But again, maybe that's part of the thing. Him not playing a full season, he's a little more rested, ready to go, and then you see these big explosions. But I think if just what we know he's capable of in the numbers, I think 100 points is actually not out of the realm of possibility this year.
I would tend to agree with you. I've got him at 23 goals and 87 points, but if he can play a full season, aside from his 57.3 IPP, which was a career high this past year, his secondary assist rate, his individual shooting percentage, his team's even strength shooting percentage with him on the ice, and his power play shooting percentage were all down last year relative to career averages. So there is some more room for growth there. So if he can just stay healthy, and if McKinnon can stay healthy, I think there's definitely hope for him as the next 100-point player.
Yeah, I could see it.
All right, and then just being a prospects guy, I wanted to get your thoughts on Bowen Byram. Obviously, a highly touted prospect. He's had speaking of not being able to stay healthy, it's been a real challenge for Bowen Byram. Does he finally break through this year?
Well, it just he played over about 22 minutes a game last year, and didn't play a full season, so that the numbers are skewed a little bit. But I think they're just going to continue to give him those opportunities because when he's healthy, he's very good. So if he could stay healthy, he's a very solid defenseman. Obviously not a lot of power play time in his career so far, if I'm correct on that, and it doesn't shoot a lot, but he's a good playmaker. He gets those assists, primary and secondary assists. So I still think, he's still a young guy that's still just improving at this point. And if he stays healthy, again, just copy and paste on what I've been kind of saying. I do think this is a guy that 40 points is definitely very valuable. You probably pick him later in the draft. But I think there's still a lot of potential for him to kind of keep pushing the ceiling up and continue to get better.
Okay, interesting. I've got him 14 goals and 42 points, and part of that is his high shooting percentage. I think he's been between 10 and 15% the last 2 years. And like you said, that's probably skewed because he's only played 30 to 40 games a season. So how does that shake out over 82? We'll have to see. But and then last thing on the Avs here, are there any prospects we should be keeping an eye on over the next year or two?
Well, right now, I guess it really depends on what you consider prospects. Because honestly, the Avalanche have one of the worst prospect pools in the entire league, and you kind of expect that because of how competitive they are. I think this year, down the line, Cal Ritchie will be someone who I think could maybe be one of the best two-way forwards in the league. Big, bold claim there, but I'm really believing him. Kovalenko, when he comes over eventually, I think could be someone who could step into the middle six and be a really good goal scorer. Kind of what we saw with, who's the Canucks guy they just had last year? The guy from Russia they just brought over, the free agent signing that scored all those goals for the Canucks last year.
Kuzmenko? Are you talking about Kuzmenko?
Yeah, Kuzmenko, yeah. Yeah, there's very similar profiles between those two players. So he could be a guy like that. Okay. So, those are the guys I'd be looking for a little longer term. This year, I don't think I call like Samuel Girard the prospect anymore. But
no,
it's kind of they got one of the worst prospect pools in the league.
Fair enough. Like you said, that's just where they're at. All right, let's move on to the Dallas Stars. I think there's lots here to digest and dissect. 47, 21, and 4. They're sixth in the Pacific. That's not correct. 47, 21, and 4. Goals for was seventh at 3.43. Goals against 2.62 was third. Goals for percentage was second in the league at 56.65. Corsi for at 52% was eighth. The power play was fifth at 25%, and the PK was 83.47, which was third in the league. They've got 11 back-to-back sets this season, tied for fifth fewest. 29% of their games are played on light days. Again, fifth fewest with the New York Islanders. Key additions, they picked up Matt Duchene, obviously this offseason, Craig Smith, Sam Steele, Derek Pouliot. Max Domi left as a UFA, Colin Miller, in a trade with the Devils. So do you see this team as improving this offseason, or not a lot of big changes here for them? How do you see that?
They're definitely a better team. I think, Max Domi was awesome in Dallas, but it was short term. I think Duchene could fill a lot of that there too. I like Craig Smith. I think Sam Steele just needed a new home again, unfortunately. So we'll see what he can kind of do there in Dallas. But yeah, not a lot of kind of improvements there. I think part of the improvement you can look at is just another year of Jake Cottinger, another year of Miro Heiskanen, and another year of these young guys going out there and continuing to improve. So I I love the Dallas Stars. This group is going to be like, when you look at that team in 2020 when they made the Cup final, it was a really boring team, wasn't very skilled, things like that. It was like, oh, we just saw Tampa beat the Islanders, and now they're playing a kind of a similar team where they're relying a lot on their goalie to get the job done. That identity is completely flipped now. Dallas is one of the most exciting teams in the league, and they got just so much skill at every position.
Yeah, they definitely do. They're a wagon. I'm excited to see what they do this next season. I want to start with Jason Robertson because it's kind of interesting. So I've got him projected for 50 goals and 98 points. I know he just put up 109 and 46 in 82 games played this past season. Looking at his luck metrics, there's really nothing to be concerned about. But when I dug into his shot metrics, 12.2 shots on goal per 60. That's well above his career average of 8.36. And so too was his points per 60 at 4.2 points per 60. He was actually third in the league in terms of points per 60 this last year, behind just Connor McDavid at 5 points per 60 and Leon Draisaitl at 4.42 points per 60. So does that continue next season? Is he that good?
I think so. When looking back at his draft profile and saying like this is a guy whose skating was going to hold him back, skating has not held him back. It's now not a strength, but it's not a problem, and he continues to show that the offense was always a huge gift of his. So I think that he continues to I think he's got maybe a couple more years of upward trajectory. Obviously hitting like 100 in last year pretty early in his career to do that. So I don't know if it's how high it's going to be. I could see 115 points, to be honest, as Dallas threatens to be the best team in the league this year. Like they could do it. They could be the best team in the West, at least. And I think that, you need a guy who could put up a lot of points like that. So I think that just Robertson's not going to have an issue putting up goals or putting up points. And I think that 115 points is something that he can aim for.
Okay.
I'm going to put it this way. I don't know where I'm drafting in my pool, but I'm definitely picking him.
Okay.
Unless it's first, obviously. But yeah.
No, my co-host Bruce Gunther absolutely loves Jason Robertson. So if I want him, I'm probably going to have to take him a round or two earlier than I'd like. But okay, that's good to know. Yeah, he's had a fantastic season. The other guy, too, I want to talk about is Roope Hintz. Is he one of the most underrated players in terms of fantasy and maybe even in real-life hockey?
Fantasy, yes. Real life, I think all the big players in hockey or the big loud voices on social media have kind of been beating his drum now for a bit, that it's like if you don't rate him high, I think you're just making a mistake. It's easy to kind of forget it because Dallas is not the biggest hockey market in the world, but for him to put up all those points and be valuable both fantasy wise and in real life, I picked him very late in my draft last year.
Yeah,
he worked out very well. I won my league very easily. But he scores a lot in 60-minute bursts. He's always had a high, points per game, goals per game, per 60, I should say. So I think he's going to continue putting up really good numbers. So if I'm Dallas, 75 points is still very good because he still does a lot of real life valuable things like bringing speed, bringing good defensive play. He's a very well-rounded player that is going to continue getting a lot of points for a long time. So I think that's a target you're going to be wanting early this time, because I think people are going to start. People who don't follow Dallas too much are starting to catch on that, oh yeah, this guy's actually quite good.
Yeah, I had caught on to him, a season or two ago, but he's a much more popular pick now than he was. And I've got him at 33 goals and 73 points, so close to that 75 points you had mentioned. Over the past 3 seasons, just for our listeners, he's ranked 23rd in the league at 3.28 points per 60. So that was ahead of players like Malkin, Ovechkin, Tage Thompson, and Jack Hughes, just for reference. I wanted to ask you quickly about Joe Pavelski. Does that guy continue to impress in Dallas, or should we expect at some point some age-related decline?
Well, it's how old is Pavelski now?
39 years old.
Yeah, he's kind of old. So, the fact that he's continuing to play like this reminds me of Ray Whitney, where he was very valuable to the end of his career offensively, and the fact that he found new life when he joined Dallas is just unbelievable. So I think that we're going to continue to see downward spirals. Even 50 points, which I know it's probably a little lower than most people have, but that to me still is a success given his age and given kind of the value he still brings as a leader, as a guy who could play a lot of different roles for that team. So, he should still get power play time, should still play first line, but I do expect age to factor in here. This at some point, right? Like it's gotta happen.
It has to, yeah. Well, and 2, I looked at his team's even strength shooting percentage at 11.5 last year. That was a career high and nearly 2 full% above what we saw from him the 2 years prior. So there's some regression there just in terms of luck as well, but time will tell. Matt Duchene, I just quickly, do you see him getting top 6 in power play 2 next year, or where do you see Duchene playing?
I do. I think, like, based off of what he was able to do in Nashville, which obviously he had to do a lot more to kind of really bring that team up. He doesn't need to be that play driver anymore, but he still can. I still think he's got some good hockey left, obviously. So I think, 25 goals I like. I think he'll get 55, 60 points, kind of just like maybe a bit better or on par of what he was doing in Nashville, and still be that valuable player. It's just maybe not as much ice time depending on kind of the situation there, just given Dallas is a stronger team.
Okay, that's bang on with what I've got too, so I love it. I want to talk about Wyatt Johnson as well. So I've got him pegged for 27 goals and 51 points next year. Had a productive rookie season. I don't really see his deployment changing much, right? Like he had 15 and a half minutes time on ice, 33% power play share. I don't think that changes next year. Maybe when Pavelski finally decides to retire, Johnson gets some power play time. But do you see Johnson getting some top 6? Like, does he play with Duchene and Ben, or is he kind of just he's a middle 9 or a middle 6 player right now, right?
Yeah, and he's put up numbers where like the 41 points last year was like that can't be understated how good that actually is for a guy like that who, the year before that was super great and Windsor had over 100 points. But I think the thing to keep in mind was he was a great goal scorer in junior, but he was a way better playmaker. And last year was kind of reversed. We saw this guy who was very confident shooting from everywhere, and it was working out for him. But he had to play a lot of catch up where he missed the entire 2021 season and then went out and put up 124 points. I don't know if I've ever heard of a 124 point increase in a junior career. But obviously asterisks given the circumstances of COVID, but
sure.
I think, the 50 points this year, no brainer to me. He's going to hit that, and he's going to be a 70 point guy down the line. So like if you're in a keeper league, I'd start targeting him because I think he's going to go up when Pavelski's gone. This year's not going to be his huge breakout year, but he's getting there.
It's coming.
So
yeah.
I was a huge fan of that rookie season. I thought he was great. Wasn't one of my top Calder guys, but that's just because like he was almost like a lesser Beniers, or Beniers. His big thing was he was consistent throughout the year. Wyatt Johnson was kind of like that. He was never the top rookie, but he was always like every month you look at him and say that was a good month. And I think as Dallas gets better, he'll continue playing a big role.
Well, and Jamie Benn too. So that's the next guy I had here. He's getting up there in age as well. And we had done another episode, 5 potential fantasy hockey busts, and he was one of them, right? So we expect some decline there for him, age-related or otherwise. But he had 78 points and 33 goals last year. I mean, he way outside his normal range. So do you expect a big collapse for him this coming season too?
I think he'll kind of regress more to like the 50-ish points. Like that was cool that he did that. I just can't see them doing that. He was dominant on power play points and doing things like that. I think it's more like just you expect going back to normal. These 1 year things. That being said, I think everyone expected Pavelski to fall down after that one really good year, and it's only gotten really better. So, but for a 33-year-old that's played a lot of rough and tumble hockey in his career, I kind of start to see. I'd expect his numbers to fall down, but he'll still be a valuable player. He'll still give you some nice, bottom draft. Like you're still happy with getting him.
Okay. And then just 2 more players here. So Miro Heiskanen, finally, after getting all the power play time, almost 65% power play share, he broke out for 73 points and 11 goals in 79 games. I think we'll see more of that in 2023, 2024. The only thing, do you see anything changing there really for him? It's
copy and paste his numbers from last year, and I expect the same.
Okay.
I'll keep it that very simple.
Yep.
I'm a big fan.
Okay. Yep, me too. And then Ottinger, probably copy and paste as well. 62 starts, 39 wins. He might get 40 this year.
He's to me, he might be a Vezina candidate. So I'm expecting a very, very good season for him. It's just like, again, I think he'll get, as long as he's healthy, he should get 60 starts, no problem to me.
Okay, and then last question here for the Stars. Logan Stankoven, just again, because you're a prospect guy. Does he see some time with the Stars this year? Obviously, it's a logjam there. Or when do you expect him to be in the NHL regularly?
I wouldn't be surprised if he starts the season, maybe goes down to play a bit in the AHL, because they do have Maverick Bourque who could challenge there, and he's a little farther along in his development, so they might give him the chance first. But I think with Stankoven, a guy that can play center and the wing, I think he's most likely going to play wing in the NHL. if they play him, I hope they give him a very good chance right away. Like, let's say Duchesne ends up playing on the right wing. I want Stankoven as the second right winger to start and give him those opportunities to succeed. But he can also win a lot of faceoffs. Like, that's the thing about him in the power play, like, or in the World Juniors. He was like the leading power play guy 2 years in a row, which was kind of nuts. But, or not power play, sorry, faceoff guy. But he, there's so much depth at center on this team. Obviously, you can't do it. And that's why Duchesne's not going to be playing center either. So I think with him, it's give him that chance, see what he could do. But if it's not working out, don't hesitate him to send him back to the AHL, do the Marco Rossi, Vasily Podkolzin thing, let him get those opportunities. Very skilled player, high impact guy. But he better start the year the NHL, or else I'll be mad.
Okay. All right, so that does it for the Central Division preview part 1. I do have just a few fun questions here, some 2023, 2024 way too early predictions. So I'll just rip through these really quick, and then we'll get you out of here. So who wins the Central Division next season?
Oh, it's Dallas. Easy. I'm a big fan of Dallas.
All right. Who wins the Stanley Cup then?
I think New Jersey's going to do it.
Okay, you and Matt are on the same page. I think that's what he said as well. They're going to be a really good team next year.
The Rangers are going to be good. Carolina's going to be good. A couple teams that are very good, close to each other. Dallas is going to be a big threat. I expect Vegas to stay pretty relevant because they haven't had much turnover. But, man, Dallas, that team's going to be – they're cooking right now. And they got a good prospect pool, too. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, they got a lot more guys that are on the way.
Any hope for my Oilers to win a cup next year?
Yeah. Dallas and Edmonton going for the conference final.
Okay.
I'll just say that.
I accept that. Who wins the Rocket Richard Trophy?
McDavid.
All right. Just making some notes here. Who wins the Art Ross?
McDavid. Who wins the Norris Trophy? McDavid. Who wins the Vezina Trophy? McDavid.
Everyone. Yeah. Okay, so Norris Trophy, who do you like there?
Cale Makar. I think Cale Makar is going to have a good year.
All right. Vezina Trophy?
Ilya Sorokin.
All right, not the first time for that one. And then Calder Trophy. Who's taking that one home?
I wonder who. Connor Bedard.
But it could be an interesting Calder race this year, right? There's lots of guys. Like, I mean, it's his to lose, but there are some interesting guys there, right?
It's a really, really good class this year. And it's funny because we said that for McDavid's year and the Crosby Ovechkin year too, right? It just seems like anytime we get these generational forwards, it happens.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a really good year, but it's Bedard to lose.
Perfect. All right, well, Steven, thank you so much for being generous with your time here, almost an hour, and running through this preview with us. Just one more time, where can our listeners find you if they want to read more of your material?
Yep, for sure for dailyfaceoff.com. I'm also doing some prospect stuff for beliefsnation.com too, but Daily Faceoff, I'm doing a prospect pool breakdown every single day, doing some tournament stuff, and hockey never ends. I'll just say that. And then on Twitter, SL is hockey, same for threads, and it's where I share all my hockey stuff.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot. Really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And then for our listeners, make sure you follow us on Twitter at FHHacks, on Instagram and on Threads, Fantasy Hockey Hacks. Check out the website, fantasyhockeyhacks.com. And then, as always, check out heavyhockey.com. That's they got a lot of great content over there. Lots of fantasy content we'll be contributing throughout the year, and lots of just general hockey stuff there. So anyway, we will see everybody later this week. Take care, Steven.